We're going to go through wrist flexion passive range holds. So for this exercise, I'm demonstrated seated, and I'm going to use a slightly lower box than what I'm sitting on. You could do this standing. You can also use the floor for this exercise as well. I'm just going with ease and comfort. So the exercise is going to bring my wrist into end range flexion, but this is active and I want to go to my passive. So I'm going to passively guide my wrist further to an area where I struggle to actively hold that position. And then I'm going to lift off, try to hold this contraction. So essentially I'll be thinking about contracting this region here and also here of my palm, my fingers, to hold this active flex position of the wrists. So to give you an example, I'm going to use this box. I'm going to place my wrist over the box as so. Now if I start off and I've got my shoulder slightly in front, away from the angle of my fingers pointing, this is not necessarily lengthening just yet for me. So if I was to try and actively flex the wrist, I can actually come off the box a little bit. But if I start to then move back, and now I try to flex my wrist, it's becoming a harder task. I'm also experiencing the tissues being lengthened that make this task slightly more challenging. So I am now at an end range. The task would then be to contract everything here, 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 to hold this position so that when I move my hand away from the box, I'm going to come off it slightly. I don't have any lag. So as I come off, I'm trying my best to hold this static position, okay, for a prescribed amount of time. What I'm not wanting to happen is this. I'm coming off and there's this lag of the wrist moving into extension before I get to a position that I can hold it. So you're really trying to minimize that little lag that may happen. Now we can get a little bit more specific, because as I set up here and I lengthen, okay, I can manipulate particular joints to challenge a little bit more the task. So I could change my elbow pitch, so turning it in versus turning it out will change what's being lengthened, what's being shortened here. So then when I perform the task, it will feel quite different. I could also opt to maybe bend the fingers. So if I curl the fingers, again, this is a way of lengthening this whole region here. And I can try to hold that effort of curling my fingers, contracting my forearm as I then come off the box. The reason I mention this is because if you are now using this exercise to help train maybe an injury, and we've been working quite specifically when you're maybe performing the pails and rails work to find this particular line of tension that was giving you issues, and you're working on opening that up, then for this particular exercise, I suggest trying to adopt that same setup, same position that you're working your pails and rails set, and then trying to perform the passive range holds in that particular position.